It was a bitterly cold evening in a small town on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa. Snow clung stubbornly to the sidewalks, and the wind carried an icy bite that made most people hurry along without sparing a glance for anyone else. Inside the warm and bustling Miller's Diner, families chatted over steaming bowls of chili, and the clink of cutlery echoed with cheer. Waitresses rushed from table to table, coffee pots in hand, trying to keep up with the dinner rush. At the entrance, the glass door opened just slightly, letting in a gust of cold air before slowly closing again. An old woman stood there, wrapped in an oversized faded beige coat that looked decades old. Her grey hair was tied back into a loose bun, and her gloved hands clutched a worn leather purse. She didn't move, just stood silently near the door, her eyes scanning the room as though searching for someone, but no one looked her way. Not the hostess, not the patrons. It was like she was invisible. She shifted uncomfortably, hoping someone might acknowledge her presence, maybe even offer her a seat. But the minutes passed, and people kept chatting, laughing, eating, and going about their lives. The old woman turned, as if deciding she should leave, when suddenly a young man sitting alone at a corner booth noticed her. His name was Marcus, a 32-year-old teacher who had stopped in for a late dinner after grading papers all evening. Without hesitation, Marcus stood up, walked over, and gently said, "Ma'am, would you like to sit with me?" Her eyes met his, wide and surprised. She hesitated, then nodded silently. He pulled out a chair for her and helped her ease into it, noticing how frail she seemed up close. As they sat, the waitress came by with a skeptical glance. Marcus didn't give her a chance to ask questions. "Can you please bring her whatever she wants? It's on me." The old woman didn't ask for much, just a bowl of soup and some warm tea. But as the steam rose from her cup, and the warmth of the diner began to soften the stiffness in her body, something changed in her face. The tension melted, and her lips trembled like she was trying to hold something in. After a long pause, she said softly, "You're the first person who's spoken to me all day." Marcus gave a polite smile and said, "Well, I'm glad I did." There was a long silence, and then, as if a dam had broken, the woman began to talk, not about her day, but about a life that had once been full of love and comfort. Her name was Eleanor. Decades ago, she had lived just a few blocks away in a big white house with a wraparound porch. Her husband, Charles, had passed 10 years ago, and her 2 children had moved far away, one to Florida, the other to California. They called occasionally, but hadn't visited in years. Tears welled up in her eyes as she recounted the holidays spent alone, birthdays forgotten, and the slow, creeping silence that now filled her days. She used to be a nurse, she said, had delivered babies, held hands of the dying, and sat by grieving families. But now, no one held hers. Marcus listened, deeply moved. He asked gentle questions, and for over an hour, Eleanor talked like she hadn't in years. But then came a twist no one in the diner could have expected. As she reached into her purse to pull out an old photograph, a piece of folded paper fell out. Marcus picked it up and glanced at it. It wasn't just a note. It was a will. Her will. Written neatly and legally, it declared that she had no heir, but it stated that her entire estate, including a house, a small pension fund, and a few investment accounts, totaling nearly $780,000, would go to a stranger who shows me kindness on the day I feel most invisible. Marcus was stunned. "What is this?" Eleanor looked down, a little embarrassed. "I wrote that a year ago, had my lawyer file it. I don't have anyone left who would care. I told myself the day someone sees me, not just looks at me, but really sees me, that's who deserves everything I have left." He was speechless. "You can't be serious." She nodded slowly. "I've walked into 10 diners this past year, sat quietly, been ignored every time. Today, I told myself if I was ignored again, I'd go home and change the will. But then you..." Marcus shook his head, disbelief settling in. "I didn't do this for anything. I couldn't let you stand there like that." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Which is exactly why you're the one." Their conversation was interrupted when the diner manager walked over, eyeing the two suspiciously. "Is everything okay here? Before Marcus could respond, Eleanor gave a charming smile and pulled a check from her purse. "I'd like to buy dinner for everyone here tonight. Would you mind making the announcement?" The manager blinked, confused. "You want to what?" "I said I'd like to cover everyone's meals," she said, "and please give the staff a generous tip." Confused but not willing to argue with a paying customer, the manager stepped away to do just that. Whispers rippled through the diner, and heads began to turn toward the old woman, who no one had even noticed when she walked in. Now suddenly, she was the center of attention. A young couple came by to say thank you. Then an older man in a veteran's cap saluted her. A waitress cried and hugged her. Eleanor smiled politely, but her eyes remained on Marcus. See what one moment of kindness can do. By the time they stepped out into the snowy street, Eleanor insisted on walking home. Marcus offered to drive her, but she refused. "I've been walking this town all my life. I think I'll manage, but thank you for seeing me." Truly seeing. He watched her walk away, her figure disappearing into the snowfall. When he got home, he called his mother for the first time in months. Then he donated to a local senior center. He began volunteering on weekends, but most of all, he kept in touch with Ellen. Weekly dinners became their ritual. 2 months later, she passed away peacefully in her sleep. Marcus was at her funeral, along with dozens of people who had met her that night. At the diner, the lawyer later confirmed the will. Marcus inherited everything, but more importantly, he inherited the reminder that a single act of compassion, done without expectation, could transform not only someone else's life, but also your own.